Hey everyone, and welcome, dear listener, to another episode of Security Headlines. My name is Philip, and I will be your guide throughout this episode. I'm super excited about this episode because joining me today is a person I had no idea of who it was before I traveled to the Hackers on Planet Earth conference in New York. While I was sitting in the crowd, like a confused Swede, I noticed this character on the stage, and I asked the person sitting behind me, "Who is this?" And everyone just referred to him as, "Okay, that's Johnny." A local celebrity that told me. Uh, so today I have a special guest joining me in this episode. It's an honor for me to welcome the hacker, the 2600 contributor, speaker at various conferences, explorer of computer system. It's Johnny Xmas. How are you doing today, Johnny?
Hello. Hey, thanks for having me. What an intro. Local celebrity is I had no idea I was a local celebrity there.
Nah, I had no idea of who you were before. So
I'm just a guy who talks a lot, and apparently everyone says, "Oh, that's Yanni."
yeah,
Okay, cool.
it was my first hacker on Hope conference, so I thought, oh, okay, that's probably just one of the regulars.
I have been a regular there for 20 years now. Yeah, I just didn't know anyone recognized me. Very cool. It's one of my favorite conferences for sure.
Yeah. So something I'm really 20 years. Wow. But how did your journey into technology start, and how did you end up here?
Oh, being a bad kid. Which I think maybe applies to many of us. Being a punk, gosh, it's such a big question. So as a child, even a very young child, I had a propensity for dismantling things around the house. Then would make my father very angry when I would do things like this. And he eventually gave me a whole bucket of things which were mine, which were okay to dismantle. And he gave me tools which were mine, which were okay to use. And then don't touch anything that's not in this bucket. And about age 8, I began to figure out how to put them back together. And just from between that and then watching my father, who was a mechanic and carpenter and various other blue collar types of things like that, I learned that you can make things do most anything you might want, and especially from taking something apart and taking something else apart and then combining the two and making them do some things they were never meant to do. And I think that is where the core of hacking lies. It is taking things apart, knowing the core of how they operate, and then finding out what else we can do that maybe we weren't meant to do with what we learned. And so I grew up kind of going down that path and having anything that was presented to me as like, here's the thing and here's how it works. I would then go, okay, how else can it work? What else can we do with this?
Okay.
And I think I got, various computers over the years and learning how to make the computers do things for me versus doing things for the computer. And I don't know, here we are. And 40 years later, I'm now speaking at hacker conferences on how to do terrible things to computers.
But how did you end up being involved in 2600 and going to Hope? And
That's a great question. 2600 was my first hacker conference. And back then, when I first went in the year 2000, there was effectively really only 2 big ones here in the US. There was DEF CON, which I think most people have heard of, and then the Hackers on Planet Earth conference, which was really had grown out of 2600 magazine, but also it kind of became like a sister conference to the Chaos Computer Congress goings on, where we would get a lot of Europeans who would come over from that, who knew of 2600, who would come to the Hope conference, possibly such as yourself. I was in my early 20s at the time, and I had met a friend in my town who was also into taking things apart and making them do things they should not. And we both read 2600 magazine. And he pointed out to me one day, hey, look at the back page. They have a conference where everyone can come to New York and get together, and it's all hackers. It's all hackers all weekend, and they give presentations, and you can learn how to do things like you can pick locks and solder crazy gadgets, like the TV be gone, was a really big thing at the time. That was the year that came out, somewhere around there. And I was like, there's no way. This isn't real. There's no way that such a thing can exist. Where are the police? They're going to arrest everyone here. And and so we figured out how we could get there. We lived in Chicago at the time, and we said, okay, we can't fly because it's too expensive, so we'll have to drive. This is how long ago it was. You know, petrol was less expensive than a plane ticket at the time. So we said, okay, we figured out exactly how many miles and what the miles per gallon of petrol the vehicle could get and how much we'd have to spend. And we figured out a free place to sleep once we were there. And so let's go see what this is. And it was absolutely incredible. I made so many friends there that I have kept over the years, who have taught me so many things, who have helped me grow into someone who now gives back by taking what I've learned and presenting at these conferences. As you've seen, you know, I learned from the people who were doing it then, and I said, I wish I could do this. And they said, you can. There's the stage. Go ahead. And it was that easy. And that's it, really cool. And I'm crazy to me now that I'm openly discussing it, how long it's been going on and how much of a fun ride it's been. And it all started from that friend who just happened to turn all the way to that back last page into 2600 and said, hey, look, this seems interesting. That was a pivotal point in my life.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Super cool. That's a cool jump down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, thanks for letting me remember that. I don't look in the rear view much, and there's some cool stuff back there.
Totally. And have you been attending Hope? Did you make it to like a yearly thing where you attended Hope? Hope is every.
Well, Hope is Hope ever since I believe 1998 has been every 2 years. Which is what makes it particularly interesting. Is it's every other year, and so when you go back, all of these people that you reconnect with, you haven't seen them in years now, and I think it leads to much more interesting presentations because you have 2 years of technological advancement in between each conference, and everyone has grown 2 years more and is often different people when you meet them, and it's very cool to reconnect like that. But yes, I've been making a point to go. I even attended in quotes this year the virtual conference. I spoke there as well.
Nice.
I've been speaking at Hope every year for the past I believe four or five iterances of it, which crazy to me because, you know, it's the first. Hope was my introduction to this entire underworld of hackers that socialize, and to be able to then go and speak at this conference that I idolized and thought was just like the coolest thing on earth was just crazy to me. And I commented on it and stayed there all the time. Like, I can't believe I'm still speaking at Hope. I love Hope. It was my gateway into this madness.
Nice. And you've just been in the field ever since. But was there any like light bulb moment where you're like, hey, I'm gonna stay in the hacking and the IT security scene forever, and I actually want to work with it and make it.
I think
do it more and more.
It's so natural to me that I can't say that there was ever a light bulb. I feel like it's just something I've always done. It's something that I've just inherently been attracted to. And, you know, because again, it's all about making things do what they're not supposed to do, or making sure that they can't have that done to them, which involves having to think of all of the things that can be done to them and to defend against it. And I just really think that's fascinating. It's like a constant game. It's a constant thought puzzle, and it makes you always have to think outside of the box and think outside of the user manual. And I just really like that because it gives that kind of internal iconoclast, internal like defiance against authority and outlet, because you have the authority that is, say, the user manual, the instructions, like here's how the software is supposed to be used. And they go, okay, well, I'm not going to do that. What else can we do here? And so I believe it's a healthy, a legal outlet for such tendencies. And so it satisfies that perpetual urge that I just have inside of me. And I really feel like I was just lucky enough to live in an age when you can be employed and do such things. Yeah. Even, you know, when I first started breaking things, there was it was rare you could get employment doing something like this. Like, yes, there was penetration testers all the way back in the 90s and things like that, but you couldn't, go on the job websites and just look for, you didn't even know what to call that job. Like the title of penetration tester wasn't something anyone had even heard of. So working in security was rare. Often you were a systems engineer, network engineer, something like that, and you just would have to research security on your own and hope you got the right information. There weren't conferences, there weren't podcasts, there wasn't there wasn't a training for any of this. It was, you had to read the forums and hope you found something cool. News groups and newsletters.
The
cool
bug
stuff.
Mailing list and stuff.
Mailing
like
list, yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And that's all we had back then. And we got pretty far with it. But that's also why so many of the major vulnerabilities that we see coming out on the news now are from code that was written 15, 20, 25 years ago. It's because 25 years ago, we didn't even begin to conceive of such a world where this many people would be seeking to attack something that was created like, SSL. And here we are.
Yeah. I mean, the demand has certainly gone up a lot, and also the democratization of the data. Now everything is available, and you don't have to join a private IRC group and prove your skills in order to read proof of concept exploits anymore.
Right. You remember back in the day, if you called yourself a hacker, that was instant invitation to be attacked because nobody's a hacker. If you think you're a hacker, we're going to prove you wrong. And nowadays, everyone can call themselves a hacker. It's always crazy to me how that's changed. Like everyone was afraid to, well, I'm not a hacker, but I have broken into these systems by writing my own code, which exploits these vulnerabilities. But I'm not a hacker. I'm not that good. And that's how we used to have to talk. And nowadays, we're all hackers.
Yeah, the community is moving a big change. But isn't that all like, isn't that because before it was much easier to become like a computer expert because there were less protocols and there were less stuff that you needed to be an expert in? So as the field has kind of grown more and more, it's become harder to actually become an expert like you were in the old days. Like the Bruce Schneider guy, he wrote a book about cryptography, and then he put everything that was basically available about cryptography in a book. And you can't really do that.
You can't do that
today.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, that's quite true. I often joke about how there was a time in our lives where your career was computers, with this hand wave, like, oh, I do computers and I know how to do computers. And they would say, oh, go talk to Johnny. He knows computers. And that's all you had to know was computers. And you either knew computers or you didn't know computers. And computers was everything, top to bottom. It was networking. It was protocols. It was cryptography, because like you said, there wasn't much going on. There wasn't much to it. And you could definitely become an expert in how all of that worked. But we needed things to become faster and more scalable, more powerful, more secure. And as that happened, it created many, 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 many more technologies. And so now you can no longer be a generalist. You have to be, you can make a career as a database administrator.
To be specific.
Right. 25 years ago, there was no such thing really as a database administrator. It was just the IT guy who handled the database, and there was one database, and it was, it was a Microsoft Access.
Yeah, Mr. Computer Man. Yeah.
Yeah, he was, and there was one IT guy, and he for the whole organization, and he took care of it all. Now you can't do that. Yeah. And so to be a security expert in everything is impossible too. Like, and everyone has their small corner of technologies that they've been drawn to, that they're perhaps experts in, but I think nobody can declare themselves just a security expert anymore. There's the field is too wide, and it's far beyond what one single human can handle.
Yeah. Do you
there are philosophies and such that, that apply to everything, and you can be an expert in those. But as far as securing specific technologies, right, there's too many.
Have you put yourself in any of those boxes, saying that you're an expert in something?
Oh no, I don't do that. I feel strange doing that, and that might still come from back in the day when like you weren't allowed to call yourself a hacker. And so I feel like if I call myself an expert, that opens the door for a whole bunch of people to prove me wrong. And so it's there's a phrase I like that says it's better to be thought of as an idiot than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. So I just will keep my mouth shut, and some people will give you the benefit.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it. But what excites you today most about technology? What kind of what do you get most excited about these days when it comes to technology and playing around with new things?
If you want to talk about these days, we're especially here in the U.S. We're one of the focal points of the pandemic here in the U.S. It's very, very bad here. We're one of the worst countries on earth as far as the pandemic goes. And because of that, there have been such leaps in the technological realms of remote communications that have needed to happen for a very long time. And it's very cool to see that happening. It's a shame that it has to happen on the backs of all those who are dying. But the fact that we're finally focusing on issues such as there's a substantial percentage of people in the US, the greatest country in the world, the US, who don't have stable high-speed internet access. That's crazy. But now we've reached a point where we say, hey, children can't go to school, so you have to have high-speed internet access. And all of these families come back and say, well, we don't, and we can't afford them. We couldn't afford it before. And now we've all lost our jobs, and we definitely can't afford it now. So what are we supposed to do? And to see these municipalities come back and say, okay, if you are, the lower income families, we're going to take care. We're working with the local ISPs to figure out how to make broadband affordable for the city to provide to you. And so cool things like that. The broadband companies, the ISPs, have been working hard on figuring out how to make themselves more cost effective and how to provide low cost or sometimes free internet to these families without, putting themselves out of business or risking affecting their existing customers. And so that's caused a lot of really cool technological advancements. It's caused a lot of smaller internet providers that used to be priced out by the big names able to come forward and still provide internet access to many more people than would have been able to talk to them before. And so it's, the small businesses are being able to rise up because they're helping during this. And so that's been very cool. We've been seeing huge advancements in the securing of these remote conversations that we have. I mean, here we're using Zoom for this, and everyone knows, Zoom was all over the news for, its general security issues when the pandemic first hit. And then Zoom responded, full force with, okay, we're going to fix all of this, and we're going to be extremely transparent and open about everything we're doing. And they bought up Keybase and are integrating that technology with this, and it's just been amazing. All those of us who have used remote conferencing software in the past know that it's all been universally terrible. Yeah. And regardless of vendor. And it's really great to see that technology is being pushed forward and improved because so many people need to use it and there's no other way. And it's just been great to see. It's just unfortunate that it takes a global pandemic, as I said, to make these moves happen. So many people have gotten into like streaming and sharing their knowledge based, we can't go to conferences and talk about these things anymore. And so Twitch and YouTube streaming has skyrocketed during the pandemic because this is the outlet. And it's cool to see people saying, hey, here's just a thing I'm working on and let's talk through it by way of that. That's definitely, knowledge sharing during the pandemic. It has to be at an all-time high as well. And so, yeah, I could go on like this forever. The pandemic has brought us many great things, just with unfortunate side effects.
Yeah, I mean, Twitch has gone from just being gaming to actually see people play capture the flag and actually hack stuff and do live programming, which I think is cool.
And Twitch only added that live programming option I believe 2 to 3 years ago, super recently.
Hmm.
And it's always been kind of a, back of the stove kind of thing, kind of strange. People were still playing with it. And as soon as that pandemic hit, yeah, it skyrocketed to now there's thousands of, they call it IRL, like in real life, thousands of IRL streamers going on at any given time, sharing what they're doing. And it's not, it used to be just, cam people just talking to a phone. They're like, hey, just woke up, thinking about getting breakfast, and now it's one of my favorite Twitch streamers. He is a watch, like a wristwatch repairman. And he streams himself. Oh, it's the coolest thing. And he just streams himself repairing watches and talks you through everything that he's doing, what everything does. And he's got a microscope on the desk because it's, microscopic things he's dealing with. That's the coolest thing. And there's so much of that now. And it's like, it's replaced YouTube as a great place to go to learn things. It's just they're live.
Yeah, you can interact with them with the chat.
Yeah, and that's what's cool. You can ask a question and get your question answered almost immediately from an expert on something or from someone who just knows a lot about it. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, that's really cool. What's the name of the watch guy?
I can pull that up here in a second.
Cool. So I also heard that you're a cigar smoker. Are you into cigars?
Oh yeah. Sorry. The Twitch streamer's name is Mr. Horologist, which is the name of someone who repairs those sorts of things. HOROLOGIST, Mr. _Horologist. If anyone wants to watch him.
Cool. I'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah, there you go. So yes, I am definitely a big cigar fan. It's been a really rough time for me because I don't smoke cigars in the house just because they leave
ventilation,
an odor, they get in everything. Yeah. Technology hates it. And so I don't. And I think that's real common for many of us, especially those of us who don't have a specific room we can set aside for it. I don't live in a massive house or anything. And so I say, well, I have to smoke cigars outside. And generally it's been fine because anytime I felt like it, I could call some friends and say, hey, let's get together and go have some cigars and hang out. Or I could go on a friend's balcony at their apartment or something. And
cool.
Pandemic hit and we can't gather anymore. And we can't, I used to run, a meetup called Cigar Sec, and it was all security professionals. And we would get together once a month and we'd meet inside of a cigar shop, and there would be 10 to 12 of us at a time, and we'd have some cigars and hang out and talk. And we eventually started attracting non-security people who were just interested in security, interested in what we were doing. And that was really cool. And then the pandemic hit and all of that got shut down. And so we've been testing it now and trying it with very small groups. Like last month we had 4 people and we met outdoors on a very large patio so you can do your social distancing and limit your numbers. And that's, it's okay. It's nowhere near as fun as it used to be. I enjoy cigars for the social aspect of them. I was never much one to have a cigar on my own. I enjoyed having cigars with friends the same way that many people will, have a drink, like, let's go get drinks. We'll all hang out and have some drinks. I was the let's hang out and have some cigars guy.
That's cool.
Yeah, and it hurts not being able to do it anymore.
I spend some time at the local cigar launch, and getting into cigar, it's truly a science with the different brands, the filler, the wrappers,
it's the same as.
Do you like? Are you Lancero person, or what do you like?
I like a less densely packed cigar. I like something that's a quick to medium quick smoke, because I like to experience lots of things. And so if we're getting together, I want to go, okay, I want to try to can I get through 3 cigars? That would be really cool. And so if you're getting like a big fat dense one, like you might get through one of those in one sitting. And so I like the lighter cigars. I like the medium flavor. So I try to avoid the real bold ones. I find with the more medium flavors, you can get more flavors in, like you could detect more nuance to the tobacco, or the different tobaccos are in there. You can really taste the tobacco versus like the filler versus the wrapper. So I like to stick right around the middle with that, and also have like a quick smoke. And so that's what I try to lean towards. And whenever I go to the cigar shops, I like to talk to the personnel there, the shop owners or the people working, and say, hey, here's what I'd like. What do you have that's new? And always try the new things. The downside is I almost never, like, I'll make notes of the ones I like, and I will almost never go back to them because I'm always going and saying what's new. And it's the same as, people who love whiskey or people who love beer. Like, there's no end to new things for you to try. And you always want to try new things. And there's so many great aspects of so many great whiskeys and beer. I mean, humans have been making new beer for thousands of years. There's no end to beer, and everyone likes their own kinds of beers, and you can also like every kind of beer. And so cigars are the same way, and that's why I really love them. It's an unending hobby. It's not just, it's not like cigarettes where they all kind of taste the same, except some of them have menthol, and nobody really smokes a cigarette for the taste. Nobody's had a cigarette going, that's a tasty one, I'm so glad it got, but cigar, yeah, it's a hobby, and it's an art for sure. Just like I said, just as like liquor and beer and things are an art, both in the production and the enjoyment.
Yeah, my good friend Conny, he owns a cigar launch in Sweden. He says there's only one way to become a cigar expert, and that is to try them all, which is
so
impossible.
How close is he?
I think he has had quite a lot, I think.
Yeah, and that's what's so great, because every time you go into the shop, it's Christmas. It's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It's everything you could ever want. Here it is, and you haven't tried three quarters of these. 75% of this you've never touched before, and the world is open to you every time you go, and it's a great hobby.
Yeah, certainly. And there's also a lot of my friend get a lot of like product samples, so they will cigar companies will send him okay, try this one, and
and they're always really good because they're trying to push their high-end stuff. I like to go to a cigar events at the stores for the same reason. Well, they'll have a vendor in talking about their cigar, and you'll usually get something very cheap or free and high-end stuff. And with not being able to smoke that often, that means I get to build up quite a nice collection of very tasty things that I have here at the ready for when I do meet up with friends, and I can say, hey, here you go, have one. These are all great. I have my little ammunition canister that's cedar lined and
your own humidor.
Yeah, it's a little mini humidor. I put a little humidity pack in it, and I can carry it around, and it's waterproof and airtight, and it could go on the airplanes, and and I always have cigars for people. Yeah.
That's awesome. There's one brand I really like called Arturo Fuente. They have one special line called the Shark, and I get it yeah.
Okay.
And I get it specially imported from a company in Romania, and it's also very weird because it's I get it from the manufacturer, a middleman from the manufacturer, and it's less than half the price from the retail value. So
could that be due to just like a Romanian exchange rate, perhaps?
Yeah, I think so, because
the economy.
No, yeah, I think it's because they have less tobacco taxes or something.
Yes,
yeah.
And then less of an export tax, I guess, or something. Or you would think that Sweden. So. Are you in Sweden? Am I right in assuming that?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, right. I didn't know if you were still there. So I have to wonder if Sweden also doesn't have much of a tobacco tax on imports.
There is this new European regulation that kicked in. I think it was a year or two ago, where they're forcing a new taxation upon all non-European imported cigars, and the taxation rate is each country get to decide their own taxation rate. And Sweden is the one that's put the highest import tax on it.
Oh, that's not okay.
Yeah.
And even still, you can get these cigars relatively cheap, it sounds like. So that's good.
Yeah, but it's it's kind of sad because it has slowed down the amount of cigars, and you have to pay. You basically have the importer have to pay $2,000 per module, so not per brand, so per version. that they import, which
Okay.
is like in order to get like rights to import it. So $2,000 just to
Yeah.
like import, and that's per version. And maybe a good cigar
That's
shop
very
will maybe have a couple of
limited.
versions. Yeah,
Yeah. Very
that sucks.
strange.
Yeah, it's
Here at
weird.
here in the
Yeah.
US we have an embargo against importing anything from Cuba. And
Oh,
this has made Cuban cigars exceptionally desirable simply because they're difficult to obtain. They're illegal to import, and we're not allowed to travel to Cuba. We can now. Very recently, they opened that up slightly, but it's still somewhat difficult. And you can bring like, 2 cigars or something back with you. You certainly can't bring enough back to share with your whole family.
oh,
But so when Americans travel to other countries who are cigar fans, we always look for a cigar shop which is selling Cuban cigars. And perhaps
okay.
in Sweden or something that's not that big of a deal. Like, oh yeah, Cuba has good tobacco. Sure, it's fine. Americans, this is the golden fleece, the mythical thing that we talk about, like a Cuban cigar. When someone has one, they call your friends and go, I had a Cuban cigar in Sweden. They go, whoa.
Wow.
It was very strange when I started traveling internationally and just seeing them being sold in the shops like they're nothing. And here they're highly desirable.
That's very nice. So yeah, let's get into a bit of hacking.
We don't
what is
have
go-
to if you want.
I love to stay on cigars forever,
Yeah.
but I think our listeners might not be so jolly about that. You've been involved in a project called Ghost Express. What is that?
That has nothing to do with hacking.
Okay.
Gosh, I don't know. We can talk through it briefly. And so we sell. I will pitch you. What if I told you that you could anonymously send a ghost to anyone you like in the world?
Why would
Would you be interested in that? Why? That's not why you want that is not my problem. It's a great prank, to send a ghost to somebody. A lot of our fans like the reaction that it gets when their friend who gets the ghost doesn't know who sent it and goes mad trying to figure out who sent me a ghost. Why would someone do this? Who sent it to me? And so a lot of people are like superstitious. Some people don't think they're superstitious until they might have a ghost, and then they start to worry all the time, and then strange things happen around the house and they go, it's that ghost you sent me. It's fun. And it was a company that we started when the idea was originally like, hey, why don't we start a company while we send nothing to people? And I said, well, you can't do that. That's not going to fly. And then my partner, Jacku, said, why don't we send ghosts? A box with a ghost in it. And so we put little haunted objects inside of a very cool box, and we can ship that to anywhere you like. I have one here. Hang on a second.
Yeah.
I know this isn't good for a podcast, but so we have a very cool box that it comes in. It comes in like a black envelope. Box. Oh. Right. Yeah. It's very nice. And inside of it, you get, we have this parchment that is, you can tell there, it's burned through. I can flip it around maybe. But cool. It has some various information on the ghost and when they died and what type of ghost and what they like and what they don't like and what kind of mood they're in. And it's all burned in this parchment. And then we have like a haunted object. This one has a very old spooky key, which the ghost is attached to. Okay. And it's all in this box, and you send it to someone you want to annoy. And it's been going crazy. We were in the Chicago paper recently, and orders are through the roof. But that was just so. Actually, it's good you brought that up, because this came from a project we were working on at our Chicago 2600 meetup.
Oh, cool.
So this actually does come back to hacking. So good question. I just remembered this. We had the idea at our 2600 meetups, which were often a very small group of people. And we everyone would come and we were all kind of working on different things, and we would help each other. Say, hey, does anyone know Python? I'm stuck on this. And, it was a great little first Friday meetup, and we'd have a blast. But we all got to be very good friends from just meeting up and having same interest, and that's what 2600 meetings are good for, is making new friends who have these weird interests that we have. And one of us had the idea of, hey, how about every month we have a project? And the project is, we're going to think of a business idea, and then we're going to launch that business. We're going to hack this business together, and we're going to figure out how to make it what we call turnkey, like automated. We don't have to do anything. We make computers do everything. And by the end of the meeting, we have to have the business functional. And the meetings, the meetings would go through 3, 4, 5 hours sometimes, but the Ghost Express was the first one that came from that. And we went from the idea of how do we send someone a ghost to sourcing this packaging and figuring out how to automate the laser engraving and automate the generation and the production of the notes that go inside of there, and making it so all we have to do is take 5 minutes to assemble all this, and then we can have 100 orders ready to go out. And then as soon as somebody orders a ghost, it automatically generates their ghost and then engraves it on the paper, and
cool.
they get an email that has what their ghost info on it, and it's very cool. And yeah, it's been fun. That came from a 2600 meeting where a bunch of hackers had an idea, and that's it's really cool because it shows like the definition of hacker and hacking is so wide. Like what we did here is we hacked a business together. We eschewed the norms of how to properly start and establish a business and said, no, what's the fast way? And it's been working great.
Do you get a lot of like worried customers calling that I just received a ghost, like who is stalking me?
We do get, yes, we on occasion will get people who say, hey, any chance you guys would be willing to tell me who sent me this ghost? And can I pay to know who sent me a ghost? We also get, can I pay to make sure no one can send me a ghost? It's a proactive protection. And we don't offer that. This is things that seems like easy money, like we would offer this service. But no, people come to us and say, how much can I pay you to make sure no one sends me a ghost? It's been a very strange experience.
And people are actually buying it, and
we're
shipping. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, this is busy season because it's Halloween here. I don't know if you have Halloween there.
Yeah, we have.
Okay, yeah. I have no idea how that works outside of here. It seems like such an American thing, but of course it came from Europe. Yeah, I'd have to imagine at the very least England. So
yeah, I think so. So you gave not this hope, but the hope before, you gave a talk about hacking enterprises and hacking big corporations. Is there any like common pattern that you see of like some low-hanging fruit that you see in the majority of the enterprise pen tests that you do?
Oh yeah. And that's one of the reasons I got so bored with it. There's certainly low-hanging fruit. Far and away, the most common thing we see. So if you even just look at breaches that happen in reality, the most common way that the breach occurred is somebody clicked on a phishing email and infected their machine with some kind of malware. Often these days it's ransomware versus, some kind of remote access device that allowed further penetration, because again, it's all about running an effective, efficient business. And these attackers go, okay, what's the quickest way to make money? Yes, we can get a foothold and we can examine their network and try to dig deeper and look for exploits and try to transfer millions of dollars out of here and probably fail. Or we can just infect with some ransomware and then say, hey, send us a bunch of Bitcoins. And then we don't have to have as many employees, because these are criminal organizations. These aren't, the 400-pound basement hacker that our president thinks it is. Like these are intelligent professionals who are hired by criminal organizations to handle these things, and they have teams, they have bosses, and so the quickest way was like, hey, if we just do ransomware, we don't have to employ so many people, we don't have to employ smart people. And these ransomware kits that come with tech support now, like the ransomware, there's ransomware developers. If you go on the dark web and just like look to purchase, ransomware kits, It's like free 1 year, a free lifetime technical support, and it's like telephone support. You talk to a human being about, hey, for some reason it's not encrypting the victim's drives properly, and they're still able to get their data, and you have some very nice lady on the other end who will walk you through what you maybe have messed up. And it's, you know, some nice lady in Romania or the Ukraine where the rule of law is a bit shaky. And so anyway, far and away, it's this issue of it's people who click on things that they get emailed or through drive-by websites or something, things they're tricked into clicking on. But secondary to that is the fact that these people nearly always have a local admin account on their machine. Like they're allowed to be local administrators on their Windows machines, meaning they're able to execute any kind of arbitrary code they want because they're the local administrator. And these are people who have absolutely no need for being local admins on these machines whatsoever. Something like application whitelisting is so easy to do in many cases, even in a large enterprise, because as far as your day-to-day job goes, there's so few applications that you need to run. Especially if you don't, when you think of, non-IT employees, every other department that's not IT, how many applications are they running? 3, 4? You whitelist those. And so then if anything tries to install and execute, it's just not going to happen. But nobody does this. Everyone just like sets it the local admin and then doesn't do this whitelisting, and anything can just run. And that's how this happens all the time. So first and foremost, the lowest hanging fruit is the fact that everyone is local admins. So stop that. Stop it. Don't do this. Secondly, the absolute lack of multi-factor authentication, both externally and internally. So VPNs, but as well as internal applications that often hide have data behind them that you wouldn't want getting out. I would say especially internally, you almost never find multi-factor authentication on an internal application. And so once you're in, now everything's easy to get because there's no multi-factor. There might be multi-factor authentication on the VPN. And so you have to fish someone into getting a foothold into their internal computer. But then once you're in, all you have to do is just steal credentials and then go. Yeah. That's those two things. Oh, and then I can do this forever. Network segmentation. A complete lack of network segmentation is another big one. Nobody does. It doesn't make any sense. And I don't mean network segmentation, like just firewalls, even like not even like placing routers and doing ACLs. Yeah. Just control which machines can talk to which other machines. If you cleaned up those 3 things in your environment, really in that order, if you get rid of everyone's local admin access and then add multi-factor authentication to anything that has sensitive data, and that includes email, and then do some at least basic network segmentation between the places where the dangerous things are and the places where they're not. Devastating to a penetration tester, which means devastating to an actual attacker. That's going to definitely cause so much pain for them to get anywhere that they're going to get up and they're going to go attack someone else. And those things are all relatively free. They cost more or less, depending on your environment, $0-ish, almost no money to implement these things. And nobody does it because it's hard. And it takes time and it makes the users angry, and nobody likes to make the users angry, so they don't do it. But even like multi-factor, I once talked to a CIO who said, this is verbatim, CIO for a Fortune 250 global food distribution organization, who said to me in response to a penetration tester report I had provided, where I said, hey, you need to put, right. So in this report, I said the way we were able to get in is because you don't have multi-factor authentication on any of your external presences that allow network access. Number 1 recommendation, add that. If you had added this, we would have been stopped and absolutely nothing else we were able to do would ever have occurred. This is the number 1 thing you need to rectify. And his response to this was, that's going to irritate everyone because it's another step on the login. It's going to frustrate them. It's going to add more user friction to this access. I will not be the CIO who implements multi-factor authentication in this company. Like, that's directly what he said. And I could not believe that I had heard that. I understand like, oh, we don't want to make the users angry, but we're talking how much addition 5 seconds it adds to log in. sometimes, and it doesn't prompt you every time,
Yeah.
you know, because you have your tokens and things. Are you kidding me? And everyone is used to this now. It's not like, oh, when I have to log into work, it's so annoying because I have to do the secret code. No, everywhere you log in now has this code. You know, we're all used to this in our banking and in our personal emails sometimes. Like this multi-factor authentication is now a cultural norm. So to say that, oh, I'm not going to do that to my users because they're going to get angry. No, they're going to accept it as a cultural norm. This is fine. We all do this now. Why don't you protect yourself with this thing? And there's so many free or relatively free solutions to this that it boggles the mind that we still have organizations that are susceptible to such basic attacks.
Yeah, totally. I worked as a network engineer at a company, and we were having this phishing problem with the marketing people. They were always pressing on these stupid links and getting ransomware and malware and shit like that. So we just created VLANs, and we throw all the marketing people into their own separate network, and then we created our own network, and then we just never told the marketing people that they're on another network, and
because they don't need to know.
No, we tell everyone just if they ask, it's the office downstairs. Or it's a neighbor.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
No one tell the marketing people this.
Right. Oh, that's just floor 2 west. That's just how we set it up for no reason. Yeah. And how much did that cost you? I mean, of course, it costs you
nothing.
Time.
Some hours
you know,
to do it.
It's a project, but you didn't have to purchase anything.
No.
No, and it's devastating.
Firewall rules, and it's done. Yeah.
Right, because then now if somebody infects a marketing person's machine, all they're going to get is marketing information, which is all on your website anyway.
Yeah.
Like, good, here, you hacked into my company to get advertising. Enjoy.
Please forward it so we can get more customers. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what are you doing now? Are you working for Casada now, or have you started something else? Or?
I'm with. Casada had to relocate their U.S. headquarters to New York City, and I elected to not make that move. They didn't. Okay. The company they had such a small number of employees in the U.S. that they wanted to make sure that everyone was together in an office to build a team, to build camaraderie, and it makes absolute sense. And I think it was the right thing for them to do. I didn't want to move to New York City. I wanted to stay in Chicago. And so I elected to not move along with them. I'm now at a company called Grim, which a lot of folks who are fans of American conferences, at least, will recognize. Grim, we often run the ICS villages, or we will have ICS CTFs where you're hacking into connected houses and, hacking garage doors and things like that. That's more our most public facing thing where people might recognize us from. We do a lot of the automotive hacking stuff. We have our cyber physical division is definitely our most popular.
Do you do SCADA systems? Like SCADA?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool.
We do lots of SCADA, lots of ICS for sure. Lots of automotive, like I said. And that's only one of our divisions though. We're a security engineering firm. Our big thing is we take on difficult problems. If somebody needs to engineer a solution to a security situation and they can't figure out how to do it, and also we're not exactly sure how we would do it, those are the jobs we take. If there's anything where it's like, oh yeah, we know how to do that, we that's easy, we could do that, we don't take those jobs. We only take difficult work, which can be fun, but it makes you sweaty sometimes. But you learn so much when you only have difficult work. And it's been very cool. Right now, what I'm working on at Grim is a CTF that we actually sell to companies to run privately internally to train. Cool. And it's meant to be instructor led. So you'll do a course, you'll do a class that's instructor led, and then you will do a level in the CTF that has several computers that are hackable based on the things you learned, and then you move on to the next course. And so it's meant to be for internal training purposes. I was hired in at Grim as a trainer, so I also deliver trainings. But the pandemic has made some of the trainings we do very difficult because they were meant to be done in person. And so in the meantime, I've been working on developing this this private CTF as well. And it is now, the first versions of it are complete and we're shipping it, and it's super cool. It's been great to work on something like that. I had never been a dev before. I had never been a development engineer. And so it's cool to get that experience under my belt. And we're actually like writing code, and, you know, it has to be stable, and you have to do unit testing and things like, you know, all of the boring dev work I'm learning.
Yeah, the QA
and that's something.
And...
Exactly. So much QA and QA of documentation. It's been so fun. And this, a rule that I have for myself is whenever I change companies, I have to take on a role that I've never done before. I have to be doing something I have never done in my life. And so with the idea being that once I've done that, now I can do one more thing. Now I understand yet another aspect of security and IT and how things work in the world. Versus doing the same thing over and over. And yeah, that means like I will never be a principal network architect or something, but it will mean that I will have way more of a well-rounded understanding of the entire world of IT and security versus most people. And that's my personal goal. I want to be the well-rounded versus the specialized. And there's no right or wrong. You know, I'm not saying that that's what everyone should do. That's just what I want to do. If you want to be specialized and be one of the best of the world at a very specific thing, we absolutely need you for that. And you should, if that's what you want. It's just not what I want.
Oh, that's cool. Is it based on anything, or are you like redoing it from scratch, the CTF platform?
Well, it's not based on anything in particular. We are building all the machines from scratch and building the networks from scratch, et cetera. It's being built to run inside of, eventually we want it to be able to run inside of any kind of emulation environment, a virtualization environment that you might have, whether, you know, we want to be able to use Vagrant if you want to run it in the cloud versus also, you know, if you want to run it on your VMware, your internal VMware hosting, we'll build the machines for that. And what we actually do is we'll provide the code to build the machines for that. So you can, you know, tweak it based on how you need the machines to be built or what have you. So it's a really cool system where we don't give you VMs. We give you the scripts that build the VMs. And so you can run with it from there, which makes it also very portable, very easy to distribute. It also means like, so then you can spin those VMs up as needed versus just having this huge, you know, terabytes of virtual machines sitting and collecting dust that you're never going to touch for a long time. It's a very cool system. And then we have, you know, we have a licensing system, and to make sure that you're not using anything you haven't paid for. And then a CTFD just to track progress and scoring and such internally. And these companies really love it. We have very, very, very large enterprises purchasing this, which I think is the target audience here, because it's for companies where their internal teams are so large that sending everyone out for at least basic levels of training is expensive, when it's something where they have the headcount internally to be able to provide education if they had the physical resources such as this to provide it with. And so that's who we're working with.
Cool.
Here. Yeah. And there's nothing like that really exists. You know, there's things like, you know, OSCP is a great lab network, but you can't purchase that lab network to run internally and have your own trainers teach OSCP. You have to pay, you know, offensive security for access to all of that. And it's very much meant to be self-study. So we're trying to find the solution for the people who want to provide this training in-house. And we have found those people, and there are way more than we thought. And it's really cool. And so that's what I'm working on at Grim right now, as what I thought was just going to be a trainer where I just get, I was like, you get the trainer guide and you talk to some people every week. And then no, there aren't people to talk to anymore. So they're like, all right, well, do you want to build some things? And I said, hell yeah. And it's been a blast.
Cool. What are you, do you get to choose what exploits or what vulnerabilities go in, or you're taking
absolutely.
the like OWASP 20 or?
Yep. Yeah. It's not just me, or I'd be so underwater that I'd want to kill myself. We have many people working on this. In fact, we're hiring like crazy right now. We're hiring a lead developer for the project, like a CTF dev lead, which I think is a dream job for most people I know who go to the conferences and like the CTFs. Like, would you like to get paid to develop a CTF? That sounds cool, right? So at the time of this recording, we're still hiring for that position. If anyone's interested, nearly all of our employees are full-time remote from around the world. So Grim grim-co.com. It's grim-co.com /careers or grim.rip/careers. Both work. It's grim with 2 M's. So GRIMM .rip/careers, and it's right there. And we have a lot of positions open. Most of the ones we have open right now are not remote because there are positions which require government clearance here in the US and have to be performed on site in those facilities. But there are several full-time remote positions open. We don't care where in the world you live, generally, so long as the tax situation and the visa situation can get handled. And we also, one of my favorite things about the company is we have a general resume submission on that page where if you just want to work with us and you have a very particular set of skills, let us know. And we definitely consider hiring great people and finding work for them to do later, because we know it's great to have great people. And so we're lucky enough to be able to have a company in the facilities for hiring people ahead of the curve. Yeah.
That's super. That's nice to see that you're hiring throughout this COVID crisis.
It's very nice. It's very nice to see that I didn't lose my job when training stopped. And we've had a number of our competitors who we were still always very friendly with. We have a number of competitors who have gone out of business, and we've let them know, like, hey, if you need to lay off your employees, please let us know who they are. Put them in touch with us, and we will give them first priority when we're doing interviewing to make sure that they can continue working. It sucks that anybody has to go out on the street, but you're our competitor, which means you do the work we do. So which means you have very experienced employees that we need. And so please have them call us, and we're happy to give them priority because we know times are tough and we should all be working together. And so that's another thing we've been doing at Grim, is trying to make sure that our competitors having to close up is not something we celebrate. It's something we help with in that undesirable situation.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
We worked with one of our partners that was hosting one of our RAG servers, and luckily we had backup of everything. But I think in January we got a call from them. Okay, we are doing very bad now. We might go under. And then nothing happens for 2 months. We emailed them a shitload of time, try to call them, and then just one day, that entire rack server just goes black.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah. So that was like, oh, okay. That's why you haven't been answering our calls. And then we called the data center, and we're like, what's going on? And they're like, oh, this guy just stopped paying the bills and just took off like a month ago.
So we unplugged it.
Yeah.
Yeah, your server's there. It has no power. Would you like to pay for it? Oh, that's terrible. And you know what? This is a good time to remind everyone to test your backups. Test restoring your backups, because that almost never works.
Yeah.
Everyone does backups, nobody tests them.
Certainly. Another thing I wanted to touch upon was that you gave a cool talk recently about a payment app called Venmo, I think it was called.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a really cool talk where they had this public feed of transactions. Was it?
Yes, this is really cool that so many people who don't live here watch my talks. And that's why I put them up on the internet, or the conferences put them up on the internet. We know it's difficult to travel to another country just to go for a conference for a weekend. Venmo is an extremely popular, I don't know if you have the word cash app there, but we call them cash apps here, where you can send money between individuals through the use of an app. And, there's so many of these. China has WeChat and, things like that. So a really popular one here is Venmo. It's US only, which explains why some people may not have heard of it. But one of the things that Venmo had done to try to differentiate itself from this wide world of cash apps was they wanted to socialize the acts of sending money back and forth. They wanted it to be a social experience And so like when you send money from your app to someone else, one of the things it does is it forces you to leave a comment. You have to say something. And they very much encourage you to use emoji instead of text. Like they want it to be fun and, hey, pizza emoji, ice cream emoji. Thanks for the pizza and ice cream. And here's $12 or, whatever. And then they made this. This is going to sound confusing and baffling to you because it's baffling to me. When you open the app, what you see is this social feed of people you don't know who are sending money to people and companies who take Venmo that you don't know. And you're watching all of these people's lives go by in front of you and the things that they pay for. And you can piece together habits from people when you say, all right, every day this person goes to this coffee shop around 3:00 and buys a coffee. And so I know if I want to find out where that person is, I can probably go to this coffee shop around 3:00 every day and find them. Scary things like this.
That stuff.
Right. And you can see, I could figure out who lives with other people by saying who is paying their roommates for the electric bill. Say, oh, these people must live together. Okay, let me look into this other person I wasn't looking into before and see where they frequent, and maybe I can triangulate where they live. There's a lot of evil things you can do with this information that is all public by default. You can disable the posting of your activity to this public feed, but that is not the default. And it never prompts you to opt in or out. It's just there. You can dig into the settings and find it and turn it off, and it's very easy. But the average person does not do this. The average person doesn't go into the settings of any application unless they're having a problem. And so that it's public by default. And several of us had contacted Venmo on this. We had several journalists contact Venmo on this and say, hey, why don't you just set this to opt in? And Venmo's response was, we want this to be a very social application, and we think people like being able to see this public feed and be a part of it. However, if our users dislike it so much, they're welcome to let us know, and we can consider changing our minds on that matter. And so in the end, the result was that because the users don't care, it's how the users still don't know that they should care. And so Venmo uses that excuse of, look, they don't care, so it's fine. It's like, no, the users aren't educated enough to know why they should care. You are. You know why they should care. You need to stop doing this. But it was very interesting. After I gave a presentation at Hackfest Canada on this and provided actual actionable proof of concept code that everyone can use to scrape this public feed, within a month of that, Venmo had ruined the ability to do that. And so the public feed is still there, but you can't get more than a couple pages worth of it.
Okay, so they're limiting it, rate limiting.
They're extremely, well, it's not, they've extremely limited it to the point where it's very, very annoying to be able to circumvent it, which is great. Like, good. I wish they would just stop having the public feed in general, but it's okay.
Something I thought was very strange is you showed when you were doing like a post request to get a user, they were returning an API key.
Yeah. So
in the sign up page, that was
right.
So weird.
And that was something I had found. And if you remember from the talk, I thought I wasn't going to find anything, and I was ready to give up. And they thought they were protected because they said, look, we do throttling. If any individual user requests more than X number of pages of the public feed, we lock them out. And then so I said, okay, well, I'll just create more users. And Venmo was doing to create a Venmo account, you have to provide a valid US phone number. And then you get, the code texted to your phone, and you provide the code, and that validates your account. And then they say, cool, now you have an account. Feel free to do anything you want. I had discovered that Venmo was providing an API key as soon as you gave them an email address and phone number. So you provide any random email address and phone number, and the application responds with an API token that you can use to then start scraping the heck out of the feed. You do not have to validate your email or phone number. It's the instant response. You fill in the box, email address, phone number, hit submit. The HTTP response to that submit is, here's an API token. And it's just, in the background of the page. And so many application security issues are that. So many things we find in the application security realm are related to applications responding on the back end with way more information than they should be. But the companies think their application is secure because the front end does not present that information to the user. But all you got to do is hit, Control Option I in Chrome or Firefox or what have you, and just look at the data you get back. This is barely hacking. This is something most users can do. And granted, you have to understand what the data you're receiving is and looks like. But
yeah, of course.
And we're talking about an access token. That's a little more technical. But if I don't know if you're familiar with the recent Grindr breach. I don't even know if Grindr is international. There's an application.
It is international, but it's
okay.
Not so big in Sweden. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a dating app called Grindr, and this app had an issue in it where if you would go into a user's account and hit password reset because you didn't have their password, so you see provide an email address and you don't know the password and you say password reset. What normally happens is that email account, an email is sent to that user's account with a reset token. And it says, click this link in order to reset your password. We all know how that works. What someone had found is when they go to the Grindr app and hit password reset, the app responds in the back end with that password reset token. And then you can just submit that token. Yeah. And so it gives the person who hit that submit button, once again, just like Venmo, it gives you that password reset token. So you don't need access to the person's email inbox to reset their password, gain access to their account, which can be devastating when you're dealing with something like a dating app. And so that was a huge deal. But we see, we see much less technical things where the app responds with personal information. And we were recently dealing with, I won't say what it was, but we were dealing with an application where you would, when you would just place an order or go to, when you were even just scrolling through the inventory of things that you could buy, the app would regularly respond with a flood of information about the user. And it was like home address, phone number, all of these things that could be intercepted and they were never displayed on the page. They had no business. They had nothing to do with what was going on. But like the app would send a request to the database that was way too big. And the database would respond with this massive amount of data that was requested. And because they weren't, requesting just what they needed, they were just requesting everything. And like security aside, what a bandwidth hog. Like how much data are you throwing back and forth for no reason? Like that scales, that can get expensive.
Yeah.
And so, back end responses are the big problem right now. And it comes from people trying to crank apps out, and it's all mobile apps. So back end responses and mobile apps are like the hot button for 2020 because devs are just trying to crank these apps out and make them work. And they say, all right, we need to display this in the page. What database is that in? It's here. All right, give me all this user's info. All right. And then once I get it back, I will display these 3 keys on the page. In the meantime, though, your browser, whether it's your phone or whatever, gets all of that info. And that can get, scraped and stolen, etc. Bad things happen. So if you're developing apps, make sure you're not requesting anything more than you need to display. And make sure that you're not having anything more sent than should be.
Certainly. Make your application, access what they need and not more. Totally.
It's the principle. There's it's called the principle of. It's part of GDPR. Principle of least information. I can't recall it now, but it's that. It's, don't ask for anything more than you need and don't provide anything more than was asked for.
Certainly. All right, let's jump into some quick questions to get to know you better. What's your favorite drink?
My favorite drink, my favorite liquid beverage to consume. What a question.
You can
Oh,
pick whatever you want.
You should have sent me these ahead of time. This is unprofessional. Oh,
You need to be
wow.
able to act quickly, right?
Yeah,
Be innovative.
I love, so I'm a big water fan. I always have water with me always. I know that's the boring answer, but I always have, everywhere I go, I'm shaking in the mic. I always got my water bottle. I'm trying to stick to non-alcoholic because I figure the alcoholic answer is the most common, and I'll give you one. But also I think most of us are big fans of caffeinated beverages. My favorites here have been something in the realm of these. This one's I have right here is called Reign, like REIGN. And so the brand
like
isn't
Monster Energy,
right. It's very much with the same shape of the logo for sure. And you're right. I didn't even realize that till you pointed out, because it's green as well though. And it's supposed to be like a king with like face armor and the crown, but that looks like an M. Oh, you're right. So anyway, what's been really cool is not so much the fact that these taste good, but there are these energy drinks coming out that are incorporating things besides caffeine and B vitamin complexes. They're incorporating blockchain amino acids, so BCAAs, and CoQ10s. And electrolytes. And so these are other things that the body needs for focus and acuity and repair and restoration. And so it's cool to see them doing a more holistic energizing inside of a beverage versus just like, here's a crap ton of caffeine and you're going to crash later. Like the CoQ10s and the BCAAs, those give you more energy with no crash, and they help repair your body. And their fuel, the CoQ10s are specifically one of the fuels your brain uses to function. And so that's very cool. And then I think I'll give you an alcoholic one as well. I'm currently very big into gin. I'm one of the few people who really, really, really loves gin and all kinds of gins. And so I used to have the bottle right here. I picked up a bottle called Opihr. It's like OPIHR in London. And it's a gin infused with Oriental spices, and it's like like Chinese 5-spice, but in a gin, and it's so good. It's so good that you can drink it very fast, and it's dangerous. And so there you go. Those are my 3 beverages of each type of plain, caffeinated, and alcoholic. Does that help? Is that a good answer?
That's a triple good answer. Awesome.
Okay.
Next question. When do you feel the most happy in your week? When do you feel that you're like peaking on happiness in your average week?
I think Saturday. Saturday, because I have a lot of things that I like to do personally, my personal life, as I hope many of us do. And Saturday is that first day where it's like the world is your oyster. Like you have the entire day that all you have to do is for yourself, and you can do everything for yourself. And it's like, well, what do I get to do today? And I still feel like when I was a little kid, when you didn't have to go to school because it's Saturday, and you get up Saturday morning and you're like, it's Saturday. We can go outside and play. So like Saturday is definitely the peak. And then Sunday is my relaxed day. And get, where you then prepare for the work week and think about, all right, what am I going to get done this week? And so Sunday is almost starting to roll back into work again. But Saturday is like the exciting, like we can do anything because I don't have to work that day. And so whereas work dictates what you have to do. And not that it's not fun. It's just what you have to do is dictated. Whereas Saturday that's your day. Yeah.
Options everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. And you could do nothing if you want. You could sit on the couch and you can watch television an entire day, and that was your choice. And you got to do what you wanted, and that's important.
You acted. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your favorite outside activity?
Favorite outside activity? Oh, I love motorcycling. Does that count? Riding the motorcycle? Is that an outside activity, or am I stretching it? Okay, good. Totally. Yeah, absolutely. That's if people who know Like if people had to list 5 things about me, cigars and motorcycles would absolutely come up in that list. I have been an avid motorcyclist since 2007, so 13 years. I've got around 25,000 miles under my belt. I don't know what that is in kilometers. Good luck, everyone else. Good luck, everyone who uses real units of measurement. It's a lot. I do them all on sport bikes, the real fast, like 600 to 1000 cc racing bikes, but I do very long trips on them, which people are always amazed by because they have this reputation of being very uncomfortable, and they're not if you do it right. And I love the performance. I love the sport bikes because they're very much connected to your body, and they just all you have to do is think about doing something and they just do it. You don't have to push and lean and throw the bike around. You just think. Cool. It's very zen. It's very augmented reality. And so I love doing touring, like long tours on racing motorcycles. And so that's definitely my favorite outside hobby by far. And you can go very far from the city, go off into the wilderness. We don't have real mountains nearby, but we have things people like to call mountains. But you can just see nature. You can go down roads where nobody is forever and just see the beauty that is, a world without buildings everywhere. And I absolutely love it. Absolutely.
Amazing. Nature. Beautiful. What's your favorite IDE or text editor?
Oh, VS Code. Visual Studio Code. And this is something I only discovered maybe 2 years ago. For the longest time, I was using Notepad++ / Sublime Text on the Mac side forever. I don't know how long I was using those. And somebody at one point had been like, why aren't you using like a real IDE? And I was like, I don't know, I've always just done this and it works fine for me. And I was working at a company where a lot of people used VS Code. And I was like, that looks really cool. I like what that does. I like how it does that. I like that there's, open source plugins you can use for very specific scenarios. And like, this is actually really cool and would help me a lot. And so I started using it and I was just an instant addict, and I love it now. I love that it's free. I love that it's cross-platform. It's very cool. It's very reminiscent of another tool called WebStorm that a lot of JavaScript people use. So it's that would be another one. So yeah, my favorite, my go-to right now is VS Code. And then second was, Notepad++ or Sublime Text, which it's not really an answer because they're not really IDEs, but that's what many of us use them for that. So
yeah. How does your workflow look like when you're supposed to start your computer and do work stuff? What do you do?
Oh, absolute chaos. It looks like chaos. It looks like I'm completely unhinged and it's all going to go off the rails at any point. But in all actuality, what I'm doing is I operate in a very fluid, holistic manner where I do what I feel like doing at that point in time, which means I hop around to different things, and which means I hop around between work-related tasks and personal tasks, which has what some people may perceive as a negative effect of meaning that I will often find myself working at all hours of the day, but I'm not working 12 hours a day. I may work 2 hours in the morning, do some personal things, have lunch, go for a walk, work another 3 hours on some work things, have some dinner, do some more personal things, build a project. And then maybe before bed, I'll put in an hour of something where I got an idea like, oh, I should try this really quick. And so I feel like that helps my mood and my motivation a lot, where I don't time box myself into saying, all right, it's work and we're going to do 6 to 8 hours of staring at this one thing. And no matter what, this is what I have to do. And even if I hate it, too bad, you have to do that. I don't like hating what I'm doing. And so if I get stuck on something, I'll go look at my personal emails, and maybe I'll go shop for a new desk or something. It's good to keep your mental health going. Working for a company like Grim, and I think that most companies have this mentality now. As long as the work gets done, we don't care what time of day you did it, as long as you did it.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah, it works for me, and it's not for everybody. It requires you to be able to make sure that you are doing work, because sometimes you just will not feel like doing work, but you have to do it. So you at least have to have that inside of you to make yourself do things when they need to get done.
Certainly. What's your favorite, like, internet scanner or port scanner? Like Nmap
Favorite
or Masscan or
of all time?
Want to rule them all.
I'm gonna give you kind of a bad answer. The first scanner I knew of was of course Nmap, but there was a scanner that had come out a long time ago called Sub 7, which you may be familiar with, and I'm talking late 90s. And this thing was insanely fast because it could do asynchronous scanning. So all scanners at the time, they'd scan one thing, one port, wait for a response, one port, wait for a response, and they were slow, just insanely slow, especially when you're talking about 90s, early 2000s infrastructure. This Sub 7 was a toolkit that included malware and rat access and things like that. But the scanner that it had was just the fastest thing on the planet. And I used to love pointing that thing at like residential IP ASNs, like all of Comcast or, our residential ISP networks, and finding open ports on people's computers, because back then as well, firewalls, especially like individual, like residential people, they didn't know how firewalls worked. Some home Soho routers didn't even have stateful firewalls. And a lot of people, when they were like, okay, I'm going to be running my home security cameras here. So, I got to be able to get, back then security cameras didn't go out to the cloud, like the Google Nest or whatever, like your Ring, like you wouldn't go to the cloud to view your stuff. You had to dial in to your home internet. You had to be able to access. And so you had to open up your firewall. And most especially routers at the time, like could allow you to open specific ports. Like the documentation was terrible. The words, were it was all lost in translation. And now for the average person, this is an absolute mess. And all they could figure out how to do was just put everything in the DMZ and just put it on the internet. So many people's personal computers were just literally on the internet. So many people, in fact, only had one computer in their house at the time, that they didn't have any kind of equipment in between themselves and the modem whatsoever. And they were just going modem right into the computer. And they were done, because they didn't, I don't need Wi-Fi, and I don't need, I only have one computer and it's just me. So like they had no firewall. And so I would run this Sub 7 scanner, and I would look for the generally open ports that I knew were associated with security camera software and remote access stuff, and just go snooping. Like I was just a bad kid, like effectively breaking and entering via the internet and see what there is to see. But to answer your question, that was my favorite scanner. Not currently, because there's, and I mean, right now, it's just Nmap is great. And nothing beats Nmap. Everyone knows how to use it. It supports everything. It's still actively developed. It's one of the fastest things out there. There are faster ones, but they're not as in depth. So yeah, you mentioned like
Masscan.
Yeah, Masscan. I like Masscan a lot. It has a very specific context in which it works, and it doesn't do UDP for one. It's for very specific purposes, and it's fast and inaccurate. And so if you need speed over accuracy, it's amazing. Whereas if you need accuracy over speed, Nmap's the way to go.
Yeah, I mean the Nmap scripts are really amazing. People are actually building like exploits in the scripts and testing out.
Nmap has an entire scripting engine, the NSE. That's for sure. And if you tune Nmap for what, if you do some recon ahead of time and tune your Nmap scans for what you're trying to discover and what you're looking for, you can make it very fast. Just most people just go Nmap IP address and then wait. And it's like, well, that's the worst possible way you can use this, but it'll work.
Yeah. All right. What's your favorite song or band?
Oh, man. So I went to music school. And so that's a bad question, because there's no I appreciate so much music. My favorite, I'd say right now, like if I have to think of like favorite band, so like what's a band where I would like drop everything if they were playing a show tonight, like where I would cancel like surgery. There's probably two. One is a band many people know it's called Less Than Jake. They're from Florida here. They're a long-running ska punk band. I've seen them more times than I can count. Their shows are always the most fun thing on the planet, and I go see them every time they're here. And they're here like they used to be when we could do concerts. They were here 2 to 3 times a year, and so that I always go see Less Than Jake. And then on my other favorite, like drop everything, is on the complete opposite side of the spectrum. It's this, so non-secular is the term I'm looking for. It's a non-secular, so quasi-religious group, so not necessarily Christian, but like a non-secular metalcore band called Oh Sleeper. And the members of this band are so masterful in their instruments, and even the vocalist, and the writing, the lyrical acuity of this vocalist is so enthralling and interesting, and you really dive into the stories that he's telling with the songs that he writes. And he likes to write they like to do albums where at least the vocal content tells a story from beginning to end of the album, and you learn of characters and interactions, and it's so cool. And then they'll put out 2 albums later, you will have a character return from 2 albums ago. So it's almost like reading a book, but it's in the form of music. And even if you don't follow any of this, because also you have to read the lyrics, because it's often difficult to understand what he's saying anyway, because it's a metal band. It's a very loud metal band. That aside, like it's still amazing to listen to and super fun. And they're called Oh Sleeper, and I love to see them live. They always put on a great show. There's so few people, and they're so passionate. The passion that they have for what they're doing is so immediately obvious and infectious, and it just gets into you, and you can't help but also be as passionate as they are for what they're doing, even if you don't even know what it is they're doing or aren't personally capable of doing it. You are just like, yes, this needs to exist in the world. So yeah, and cool. 2 completely different bands. Yeah.
Wow.
Good question.
I need to go. Yeah, I need to go check them out now. Okay, next question. How do you do like package management? How do you make sure your system stays happy and up to date?
So I predominantly use Macintosh. I pride myself on using a Mac for pretty much everything, including streaming, all of that. I use Brew, and I use Brew's feature to keep itself automatically up to date, which a lot of people don't like because it might break your stuff, and it does break my stuff on occasion. But I try to install everything possible via Brew. I like the fact that I can export that config when I get a new Mac and just throw it right in there and go and populate it and get back to right where I was, or right where I left off. So yeah, Brew is my package manager, hands down, on the Mac, or Homebrew it's called, but the command is just Brew. Yeah.
Nice. What's your favorite karaoke song? What's your favorite song to sing at the karaoke night?
I was just thinking about this. Favorite, I don't know. So it's going to be silly because I'm a tenor, and a lot of the famous tenors are not necessarily like bands that I'm a fan of. So I don't know, are you familiar with Creed, the old like 90s, early 2000s band Creed? So I can sing Creed songs very well. I was never much of a Creed fan, but I enjoy singing those songs because it's in my range, and I can really put a lot of emphasis and myself and have fun with them because it's directly in the center of my singing range. Also Johnny Cash. I can sing a lot of Johnny Cash with that low tenor. Johnny Cash is an incredible artist, but he's not someone that I put on a daily basis to listen to. You got to be in a certain mood to listen to Johnny Cash, but I can sing like Johnny Cash really well. And so I like doing those at karaoke. And you know, one of the main purposes of karaoke is to have the audience enjoy what's going on.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily about you just doing something for you because you want to do it. It's about you performing Like, that's karaoke, we're performing. And so I can perform these songs very well. And so I like to sing things I can perform well that aren't necessarily songs that I might listen to at home.
Yeah, totally. Last time you read a really good e-sign or a proof of concept exploit that you think, oh, this is a really smart way?
You know what? The ones I actually get excited about are the really simple ones. Like when I see a really complex one, I go, you know, it's cool, and you go, wow, somebody really sat down and really hammered away at sorting this one out. But the ones I really like are actually like the grinder exploit I just mentioned, where it was just a matter of looking at the response. Those are the ones that I can't stop talking about, because I get so shocked that it took this long for someone to discover such a basic flaw. And I love when something is easy to exploit, because it also makes sure that flaw is going to get fixed very quickly, because they're often easy to fix too. Whereas, like, if somebody puts out an extremely complicated proof of concept, it's often, unless you're talking about like remote code execution and arbitrary code execution at like system level, or, you know, ring 0 or 1 or something, it's often like, well, yeah, that's a big deal, but also it's almost impossible to pull off, and it requires this perfect storm of context for it to be effective. So let's all calm down. Whereas the real easy ones are often the ones that have the biggest impact. And those are the ones I love seeing. And like I said, just the shock of how easy it is really just this enjoyment I get. And maybe, I don't know what that's from, but I clearly keep talking about that grinder one. And I think that was the most recent, like, super simple one I heard of. So that's the last one that I liked to answer your question.
Yeah, it's a good, I think there was, you remember there was like a couple of NSA exploits that got leaked 2-3 years ago, or something like that.
Quite a few.
And then there was,
yeah,
and then there was one of those exploits that were like, it was like stupidly simple. I don't remember which one it was, but it was like, very stupidly simple. And I remember me and a friend, we were just looking at this and like, is this what the NSA is like sitting on? Like, really stupid mistakes that developers make.
Right. And it's not that, it doesn't have to be insanely complex to be like government grade exploit. It has to be insanely effective. And complex doesn't necessarily mean effective. All it requires is that it works consistently, it's stable, and that the vendor or target is not aware of it. And certainly there's exceptionally smart people who work for the NSA who develop exceptionally complex exploits. They just don't have to. They're as complex as is necessary. And sometimes it's just not that necessary.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that like people will have this giant code bases, and then just someone makes a fuck up, and then there is a remote code execution. And
right. Yeah.
A lot of mistakes that become
and it's
serious
that
exploits.
easy. And that's the problem, is that the devs are always on the lose. The devs always have the hardest time, because they have to think of every possible scenario, every possible vector, every possible attack surface, whereas the attackers only need one. It's tough. And we as information and security professionals, like, we don't give those developers enough credit. All we do is give them a lack of credit. All we do is blame them for everything. We don't really have an appreciation for how just insanely hard their job is to, because we have a phrase here, it's because the perfect is the enemy of the good. And we expect them to be perfect, and they can't ever be perfect. They need things to be good, because they need to get it out. And anytime they're not perfect, they're made to feel like garbage because they weren't perfect, and that's ridiculous. Now, if it's something like basic that they should have known better, for sure, definitely they should be aware of that. But we need to stop shitting on people so much for doing good jobs.
Totally. All right. So one last thing I want to cover with you, since you've been working a lot with Casada, is do you have any good tips on like bypassing web application firewalls? Like some stuff that the companies don't want us to know?
Oh man, it's the easiest.
Kind of UC
So if you go, I gave a talk at a place called QCon last year, and you could watch it. It's on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Johnny Xmas. But and my slide deck is on my GitHub, which I can send you links to all of these. And the slide deck for it has tons of great bypasses in it. But the ones that work the most, unfortunately, are also the easiest. It's things like, so we'll say like, hey, most people who are doing application firewalls, like they're doing IP-based stuff. It's unfortunate. I mean, that's why they're called firewalls, because they're generally IP-based. All you got to do is either rotate your IP, and that's really easy. For like $15 a month, you can subscribe to services that will provide you with thousands of IP addresses for you to rotate through via transparent proxies. And you can use a new IP address for every single GET request that you have or whatever.
And how do they get those IPs?
Through various fun means. This will coincide with my next suggestion, and I'll answer that question more directly.
Okay.
The next suggestion is just use residential IPs, especially if you're attacking like e-commerce sites or sites that are generally being attacked by, or generally being used by the average person from their home. Like a company that would not ever want to block a residential IP, which is most companies. Just use those, and you go, okay, well, how do you get thousands of residential IPs? How do you get any residential IPs? I know how to get one, and then if that one's blocked, what am I supposed to do? Because that one is the one I have. Perhaps your neighbor, and then maybe the coffee shop across the street, and then you're out. There are companies that use so there's all these free VPNs that are out there that everyone's using now. Ola VPN. You can't watch YouTube without getting hit with 6 ads for a free VPN. Those VPNs are making money on the other side by selling access to your IP address when it's VPN'd in. One of the biggest is called Luminati, Luminati. Just go check them out. They sell residential IP packages. And they get them by way of their other company that's called Ola VPN, HOLA VPN, which is a huge VPN. So Ola VPN sells themselves to people who watch international television and want to be able to spoof the country they're in. Ola VPN is free, or there's a paid tier. The free tier it turns your computer into an exit node for botnets. It allows people through the Luminati service to use your IP address to scan, scrape websites or do whatever it is that they're doing. So yeah, by using these free things, you're agreeing to host malware. And it's right in the terms of service. Go read the terms of service. The terms of service are very small. They're easy to read. A lot of these terms of service that nobody reads, they're like 3 paragraphs. Still nobody reads them. And it's right there. There's a great mobile SDK called Monkey Socks that does something similar. And all you do is you fold Monkey Socks into your application, and Monkey Socks will pay you as the developer for every IP address that runs that SDK, because they then use that mobile phone for the same purpose. So now you can get cellular mobile IPs, which nobody's going to block. Who on earth is going to block an entire mobile IP network? Nobody.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so that's my big tip there, is use residential and mobile IPs. And they're relatively inexpensive to do so. So there you go. That aside, if you're doing HTTP stuff specifically, just make sure you're including all the basic headers that get included. Your accept */*. You're providing a user agent that's real. Those are the 2 big ones. You're responding with any cookies that are supposed to get responded with, and that's it. It's super basic. You can get way more complex with that. If you want to go all out, learn Selenium. Selenium is just a devastatingly great tool for web automation that's very difficult to detect if you change the default machine settings inside of it. So change the default resolution and how much RAM it has and all of that crap, because everyone looks for the default fingerprint of Selenium because nobody knows to change it. So if you use Selenium and you change the default to config to really anything else, you're going to get extremely far, because Selenium does a great job of mimicking a legitimate user. And you can tie Selenium into Python. Like you can get crazy with scripting with it. So those are all my basic tips for web application firewall bypassing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Is there anything we missed that you would like to cover?
Oh man, I actually do have to wrap. We covered so much today, though. This was great. To answer your question directly, no, I can't imagine what else. I'm sure we could talk for hours on anything, but we covered so much that this was this is going to be a long episode for you.
Yeah,
it was a good time.
Lot of nice stuff. So how do people keep up to date of what you're doing? How can people stalk you on the internet?
So I stream 1 to 3 times a week, which means I average 2 on Twitch. I'm twitch.com/Johnny Xmas. Again, that's with a 0 and a 4, the same as my Twitter handle. You can catch me on Twitter. I'm usually yelling on there a lot. I try to mostly stick to being funny on there. And that's Twitch has been the big way this year. 2020, we're all stuck inside. Twitch has been huge. So I do a lot of stuff on Twitch. I try to do drone streams on Sundays. Cool. I do Wreck It Wednesdays, where I just take something apart all the way down, and then Fix It Fridays, where I put things together.
Nice. All right. Super. All right, Johnny, thank you so much for joining me today in this episode. It was a pleasure having you on, and I learned some stuff, but I'm sure our listeners learned a lot as well.
Yeah, this was good. This was a great, this really picked my day up. I appreciate you asking me to do this. I'm glad I got to. This was fun.
Yeah, totally. We got to have you on another time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem.
Totally. All right. Enjoy the rest of your day, man.
All right. You too. It's good talking with you.